Welcome to the Nativity Podcast, where we give listeners a behind-the-scenes look into the life of our active Catholic parish here in Burke, Virginia. How can we help you grow in your own faith? Listen to find out.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Nativity Podcast. I am your now longtime host, longtime veteran host of 2 full seasons, Father Ed Bresnahan, parochial vicar here at the Church of the Nativity in Burke, Virginia. And with me, as always,
your co-host, Mary Castellano, Nativity's director of social media.
And man, Mary, we made it. We are at the end of a second season.
We made it.
2 whole seasons. And I think starting a tradition, because we technically started it last year, but you really need 2 things to make it a tradition. You have to keep it up.
Right, yeah.
Right, in order to make it a tradition. We're starting a tradition of having another recap episode at the end of a season. We did 8 episodes and then did a recap kind of looking back. And I think we're going to do the same thing. We're going to look at the last 8 episodes, what we have here in season 2, and kind of looking back and saying, wow, what have we learned and what's been going on? Kind of some of the highlights, and hopefully for people who are just tuning in, or if this is the first episode that you've heard, to be able to look back and say, oh, I'd be interested to hear about that episode or something along those lines. So we're gonna do that. But I love this idea of looking back, and it brings back a lot of memories, right? It brings back a lot of memories, and I think one of the things that I realize that people do is when they clean, or if they're moving or cleaning house, sometimes they discover or rediscover their old high school and college yearbooks. And when you look through them, yeah, okay, you got your club photo that you were in the debate club, you were in the super nerd society, you were in the marching band, and they get your awkward pictures. And then you have your actual standard class picture, the one where they always have you tilt your head the same way and stick
awkward.
Your neck out and then look down and then look up. And then and then instead of smiling, you have to put as much of a deer in the headlights look as you can get, and that's your photo.
That's great.
Right.
That's
and
so
if you're
accurate.
Right, and if you're lucky, your senior photo involves that look but with a tux.
Right.
Right, or the
this fake thing they drape over your shoulders. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, one girl in high school had the funniest senior quote, and it was a quote from the student handbook that said that girls may not wear dresses or outfits that don't have sleeves.
Right.
That's what it was. It was just the line from the student handbook, and it was beautiful because it was paired with that ironic photo of her with the sleeveless senior photo.
I've seen that. That's really funny. It's so true.
Yeah. So, but aside from all of that, the real trick is, or not the real trick, but the real sort of you've made a name for yourself, is if you actually show up somewhere else in the yearbook, right? Not in one of the staged photographs, but in one of the organic photos that scatter the whole thing, or something like that. So I got to ask, Mary, in a blast from the past, if we look through your yearbook, would we ever find a photo of you doing something or what would we find?
Yeah, I think you definitely would find something. I did theater for 4 years when I was in high school, but the more kind of fun answer is my older siblings almost made the yearbook for worst car. They had best car, worst car.
Oh,
so
yeah.
my siblings came in second for worst car, and we had this giant purple 12-seater van that was as old as I was, and it died when I was 12, and we mourned the loss of this car. This was the car that that all my older siblings learned how to drive on, that we would all drive each other to school in this car. It was the family car. And I just remember my siblings were so mad that they didn't win worst car. They
the giant purple van. How do you lose?
Right? Yeah. And anyway, it was kind of a funny thing that they're like, oh man, we really wanted to win worst car. And I'm like, of all the things, really? Okay. Whatever floats your boat.
So funny.
So we didn't make it in there, but we were close. We were second for worst car. What about you?
I showed up once in one of my yearbooks. I can't remember exactly which year it was, but they were photographing, I guess, homecoming or something like that. And you have your standard pictures of everybody dancing and everything like that. But I guess I must have just decided to pop out one of my like gymnastics moves. Now, for those of you who know me, you know I'm a large dude. I'm, in the 300-pound range, right? Like I'm not a skinny priest, right? By any stretch of the imagination. And so if you see me and you try to guess what sport I played, you would guess probably football, maybe wrestling, maybe in like the heyday as a boxer or something like that. I got kind of more of a stocky vibe. But the truth is that in high school and before that, I was a gymnast. And so gymnastics was my sport. And even when you kind of leave the sport, you still have like cartwheels and handstands and all these kinds of things at your disposal. So I don't know, in high school, whatever, trying to be funny or trying to be cool, I think somewhere somebody got a little circle and I just did a handstand or something like that. So there's a picture of me, suit coat falling down over my head, heels up in a perfect handstand. Wow. And so it's
that's
somewhere in the annals of my high school history.
Was that like in the middle of the dance floor?
Yeah, exactly. Just
man, that's so epic.
It's
I'm happy
epic.
That they got that for you. I'm happy for you that they captured that moment.
Me too. It's just really funny because if you knew me in high school, you know that I was not the guy who was normally at the center of the dance circle. So not one of the cool kids or any of that stuff. But it was so funny that just happened to show up. So I get to show people that I was a lot cooler than I really was. So yeah, it's a blast from the past. So, but speaking of a blast from the past, this season, friends, I'm hoping that when you tune in and you hear these podcasts, you're able to sort of binge them. You're able to get them all in one, boom, 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 quick succession, quick, give me the next season, right? But for those of you who are our dedicated listeners and following us, waiting every couple of weeks for a new episode to come out, you probably noticed that it didn't work out exactly right this year. So Mary, how would you describe, as she is cracking up over here, how would you describe the season as a whole, our production of it, everything that went into putting this season together? How would you describe it?
Oh man, this season this season felt kind of long, not in that every episode was long in of itself, but there were quite a few gaps in between recording, in between episodes, whether that was people's schedules, whether that was technical difficulties. The really funny part was because this happened with season 1, we went like a month in season 1 without recording or uploading. And I was determined. I'm like, not again. I'm going to be on the ball. I'm going to get everybody lined up. We're going to record boom, 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 back to back. And so around like April of this past year of 2022, especially during Holy Week, like I had arranged for a bunch of people to record like in 1 week. And my goal was to have everything recorded by like the end of May. But that didn't happen. So it didn't happen because our sound mixer decided to break. And
it just went kaput. It was terrible.
Yeah, there was no we did all the typical kind of troubleshooting things, and it would start.
Did you try turning it on and off?
Yes. All the things. We tried all the things, and it actually cut out in the middle of recording 2 episodes. And so we were really, really grateful that those people were willing to be patient with us and flexible in their schedules to come back and re-record.
I think it worked well for them anyways, simply because at least one of the episodes, I think they were kind of nervous coming on the show. And so I think doing one and finding out that was a dry run and that we needed to re-record, but then they had a chance to kind of go back and think about maybe all the things they were like, oh, I totally forgot to mention this, or I got to say that. So I think having the second run for those was very fortuitous, but it had to be annoying for you. Oh, it had to be just absolutely frustrating.
So frustrating.
Yeah. And friends, this is so funny. I appreciate podcasters so much more now that I'm doing podcasting, because you really do get a sense of what they go through to make something sound right or sound good, because it just doesn't happen overnight. It just doesn't happen in one moment. You don't just do one take and it's perfect. And for us, trying to figure out what kind of equipment we need that's actually going to sound pretty good, that's also within a budget that does justice to the church.
Right.
Like we're not trying to sit here.
We don't have a professional studio, although I think we've made your office work really well.
It's true. People, when they come by and see us when we're set up for podcasting, are definitely impressed.
Yes.
But I think also they're impressed in the same way that like a World War II veteran might be impressed at the internet, you know? Like they're just like, not that they've never seen it before, that they're not capable of knowing how it is, but being able to see how a smartphone works or being able to see, you know, what? My phone does this? You know, it's all wonder and new. So they see all this stuff and it looks way more intimidating than it really is. I mean, friends, we've got a couple of microphones, couple of wires, couple of gadgets, but when you put it all together, it looks like an operating table.
And that's one of the things that, like, whenever we get a new guest on, it could take a little while to get them like situated and comfortable, and that's one of the things that I try to tell them is, you know, it's just a conversation, and you kind of like, once you're in it, in each episode, then it really does just feel like a conversation. You kind of forget that you have this thing hanging on a boom that looks like this metal arm in front of your face, or, you know, that you're wearing earphones, or, you know, you're in a small office with the windows covered or whatever. Or
that there's just a bunch of stuff between you and the person you're talking to as opposed to just a regular conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Father, what were some highlights for you this season?
Well, okay, so I like piggybacking on the idea that it was long. It was a long season and a lot of things happened.
Yes.
So I think when we go back and we look at like what the last 8 episodes involved, one of the things that really struck me, it's an overall highlight, but one of the things that really struck me was just how many different areas of the church we covered.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we had some vocations, we had some pastoral care, we had some environment and art, we had a little bit of everything, everything from art to drama to the great outdoors, and all of it was involved and all of it was here, and it was pretty fantastic to see that the sheer variety of different things. So I think if you could characterize this season, I think variety is really a thing. Not that the first season didn't have variety, but this season, just across the board, way different kinds of conversations we were having with people. So I think one highlight was just being able to have us be flexible with the kind of conversation we were going to have with the person that we were going to talk to. So I think that was good. I think a couple others. I think having Deacon Kelly on was just an absolute joy. That man, I could just listen to that voice for hours. I just thought that was fantastic. Certainly, I'm always inspired by Father Bob because Father Bob is our boss, and it's always nice because he listens to all of our podcasts and approves them. But I just thought it was very good having him back and also celebrating the goodness of the parish. I think he liked it. I think he was even more comfortable than he was even the first time.
Definitely.
And I think just watching all that, so I just think we just kind of grew into our own there.
Definitely.
But if there's like a highlight, probably one moment that I think maybe my favorite moment in all 8 episodes, there was one moment when you and I are listening to Kimberly Seatman talk about theater ministry. And as we're listening to Kimberly talk about theater ministry, one of the first things that kind of comes out was that she'd only been doing it for like 4 years. Mm-hmm. And in my mind, theater ministry has been so entrenched at Nativity that I assumed she'd been doing it for decades.
Right.
And, we're having this conversation and I'm working on the assumption that this is seasoned veteran. This is super talented, like she's been doing it for years, institution, but she had managed to have that same kind of mystique and same kind of, professionalism in just a couple of years. Like she hadn't even been a member of the parish for like that long. And she was already like so ingrained in the fabric of what our parish was all about. And I think just the look of your face and my face as we're like, wait, how long have you been doing this? Like, just like since 6 months ago or something. Basically it was an absolutely dumbfounding moment to realize that not only do we have people who have been doing these things for years, right, and decades, like how long had Operation Starfish been in action, right? This is, years of raising money, right? Legacies of people who have passed away, right? Father Martin and other people who have gone before us. And yet, that doesn't keep somebody from being involved in the church. You could literally walk in our church tomorrow and make an impact because we need you.
Yeah, that's a beautiful message. I'm really glad you said that. Yeah, that was one of my takeaways from her episode as well, was just, and we mentioned on that episode that she, I don't know if it was me or her that referenced an in-person conversation we had sometime like right before the pandemic. I told her, I was like, oh, Kimberly, like you've been doing this for years, right? And she's like, no, this is only like our second show. And I was like, second show? What?
Yeah, right. Oh, and you throw in COVID, right? So it was like she'd been doing this for 4 years, but like 3 of those are COVID.
Yeah, more or less.
Something like that. She'd been doing it for like 5 years, and 2 of it was COVID. I can't remember the I can't do the math.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
How about for you? What was your highlight?
Oh man. It's really hard this time to pick one highlight, because like you said, we talked about a really wide variety of things, and I'm really glad that this season, and that was the intention for this season, is to just kind of expand a little more, to like touch on things you wouldn't normally think would maybe be a thing at a parish. Like creation care is a really important part of our ministry of this church, and now kind of our identity moving forward with like social justice. Whereas maybe that wouldn't have been like a thought, oh, like they have this episode, or like theater ministry, how important that is. Or even like, Appalachia home building, like that was our first episode of season 2. So yeah, with the wide variety, it's hard to choose a particular episode to focus on, but there was one part of a conversation, and it was in our latest episode with Father Bob, that really struck me. We were talking about our Jubilee, our 50th anniversary that we'll be celebrating on June 11th, 2023. And we invited Father to come on and just share about what we're going to be doing to honor our Jubilee, what can people expect, what's the day of going to look like. And that particular day is going to be the Feast of Corpus Christi in 2023, June 11th, that Sunday. And it
is 50 years to the day.
Yes.
That the first Mass was celebrated in Nativity. So pretty amazing moment.
Yeah. And one thing, I can't remember exactly how we transitioned into this. And maybe it shouldn't be surprising because I'm talking with 2 priests, but it was so beautiful, just the seamless transition to talking about the true presence of Christ. And like you could tell in that conversation, like the tone changed to like this just kind of deeper reverence. And one of the things that I haven't really shared publicly, but I'm happy to do so, is since I've started attending Mass at Nativity, kind of working the Mass and live streaming since COVID started, I've noticed a pattern that I really enjoy listening to Father Bob preach on the Feast of Corpus Christi, because you can just tell through the way that he's preaching and speaking that the true presence of Christ is so central to his priesthood, to his belief, to who he is. And there's just this really deep reverence that I love hearing. And usually, of course, with the Feast of Corpus Christi, that comes out very naturally. And so when that came up in our conversation, it just brought out this tone, this reverence of truth. And I love that. That also connects to what we were saying, I think in episode 9 of season 1. I think one of our takeaways, like one of the very last things we mentioned to our listeners was, what we're doing here really is not about us. It's not about you. It's not about me. It's not even about like the people, the community. It's about what we're doing for the Lord. And so I love how toward the end of our Jubilee celebration episode, where Father was talking about, celebrating this community, celebrating the legacy that is Nativity Church, we could still bring it back and authentically bring it back to the presence of Christ, and how that's what drives us. That's what we're all about. And so it was just such a beautiful moment. So that's definitely one moment that really struck me. And I would love to have kind of more conversations like that moving forward.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I know that one of the things that we do, we tend to have moments of theology on our podcasts, but our podcasts tend not to be very theological in nature. They tend to be more ministry related, more more life in the parish style things. But who knows, right?
But some people are really good at that, at weaving the two together.
Exactly.
And that's what we noticed. And that was another kind of highlight. I can think 2 right off the bat. The first one was Kat Sands' episode about pastoral ministry. She just beautifully weaved the theology of walking with someone who is suffering, and just that very real, just that reality into her real life work. And I just thought that episode, it was seamless. It wasn't like, now we're going to talk about theology, now we're going to talk about visiting the poor. Like, they were seamless. They were together. They're intertwined.
Sometimes when we think of ministries, we think of, I do this thing, and then the Lord approves of the thing that I do, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm busy making a gift for him, and then I get to give him the gift. Mm-hmm. But Cat Sands, I think, saw it in a very different light, because Christ is with her as she's doing the ministry, mm-hmm. right? He's included, he's guiding her steps so that the ministry itself can be fruitful, mm-hmm. right? So it's not just a thing I do to check a box for God. It's a thing that God invites me to do to serve and glorify him. It was really evident in the way that she talked.
Another person too, and not to keep bringing up theater ministry, but one of the things I also really liked in Kimberly's episode was how intentional she is about making theater a ministry. And I really appreciated when she said that when Father Bob first asked her, hey, I really want a theater ministry, I'm kind of calling you to do this work. And she said priests would ask her, how is theater a ministry? And at first she didn't know what to answer. And even kind of in conversations since coming and working here, some people are skeptical. They're like, how? I don't understand. Like, how is putting on a play ministry? How does that lead you to God? But one thing I really appreciate about her, and this also comes out of the fruit of a lot of the other work that she's involved in, like being a catechist and volunteering, especially with the youth, is that she makes that choice to make it intentional, to make the ministry aspect, to bring God and faith into her relationships with the people who come, even if they're not Catholic. They could be from another parish, another denomination. They don't even have to be Christian, and they can come here and feel welcomed, and ideally feel that, that presence of God and the love of Jesus. And she's not shy about it.
Right.
And so I just have a lot of admiration for her and the people on her team. And I mean, I can say that for many of the ministry leaders.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that resonated clearly in season 1, episode 1, when Jim McDaniel came on, and a couple of times even corrected me, because I'm sitting here, talking about, X, Y, and Z, just in a standard, we raise money, we go help people. And he says, no, we are building relationships here.
Exactly.
And he was very clear, about that. And I think keeping our mission central, that our eyes are fixed on Jesus, and from what Christ asks of us, it turns into these amazingly fruitful things. So I think I think that should be a really good reminder to us, just moving forward on the podcast, that for future people that we run into, for future people that we interview, that's really a goal. Our goal is to keep our eyes fixed on Jesus, and then he's going to provide the questions, the topics, or what it is that we need to talk about. So
yeah, and I think to that exact point, one of the quotes that I really love from this season, from episode 1, when we were interviewing Bob Corsi, he was talking about Appalachia and how he got involved, and at first he was explaining he loved the idea of getting involved in Appalachia home building, but he didn't feel like he had time. And I love what his wife said to him. She said, if it's important to you, you will make time. And so I thought that was just such a beautiful takeaway, just talking about intentionality. Like, if something is important to you, you will make time.
Yeah.
So, if we claim that, the Lord and our relationship with God is the most important thing in our life, then we will make time. We need to make time, and we will.
And I think that came through clearly too in the episode with Deacon Peter.
Yeah.
Because when we focused especially on Star Wars Day, because we knew that Deacon Peter, and now Father Peter, I should say, was so invested in, he loved those things, Star Wars and Yoda and all those kinds of stuff. So we celebrated May the 4th. With the guy who now gets to say, may the Lord be with you.
Yeah.
Right? So he's been ordained a priest. We got to celebrate that episode with him. And one of the key features for him was being really intentional. He was intentional about the work that he did while he was here for a year. And then he's intentional about learning as much as he can to apply to the flock that he's been entrusted to. So,
yeah, I really appreciated how in that episode, it was my suggestion that you and I give him advice.
Oh, yeah.
You know, me as a layperson, and especially as, you know, a woman in the pews, and you as a pretty seasoned priest, 12 years
12
now?
years at this point. Can you believe it? 2010 was
Isn't
my
that-
ordination.
That's amazing. And so I loved that he was open and very willing to listen to the tips or advice that we were going to that you and I gave him. And I could definitely tell, even just in working with him for a year, that he was a very good listener. He was really good about just listening, you know, to what people had to offer. But if we can give our listeners a little update about how he's doing. So he was ordained, and it was a beautiful ordination. Father, you were there. I was not. I think I did watch it on TV. I think it was live streamed.
It was, yeah.
But I was invited to his.
One of 8 guys that got ordained.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they ordained
right.
8 men his year.
Yeah,
So.
that's beautiful. Yeah, Diocese of Arlington really doing a
bringing
great
it.
job.
We're crushing it. We have like 50 guys in formation too.
Really?
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's amazing. Yeah. So that evening, I was fortunate enough to get invited to his reception, the kind of after party, not the after party, but like, you know how you have like a wedding reception, you got the ceremony and then the reception. And so I was fortunate enough to get invited to his ordination reception later that evening in Manassas. And we actually ran into a fan of the podcast.
That's right. Our first fan, everybody.
It was
a public sighting.
It was so funny. And so I don't know her name. She was a young adult. And my colleague Allison and I and Rebecca, we were invited, and we were sharing a table with Father Bob. And Father Bob used to be the pastor of All Saints, which is in Manassas. And so, and Father Peter is really closely associated with the community of All Saints. So a lot of people there were, you know, just flocking to Father Bob. How are you? Giving them the life updates. And so we had a lot of people coming to our table. So Father's going around the table introducing, you know, my colleagues and I to new people. And this one woman looks at me and she's like, "Your name's Mary?" And she was like kind of listening to my voice. And she's like, "Wait a minute. Do you and Father Bresnahan like run a podcast?" I was like, "Yeah, we do." And her face just like lit up and she's like, "Oh my gosh, you're like from the podcast. Oh my gosh."
We have a fangirl.
I was like starstruck. It was just really funny. And it was anyway, it was our first, like a celebrity sighting. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I really don't deserve this. But wow, thank you for listening." She's like, "Oh my gosh, I really love it," whatever. So and that's something that's really been very encouraging to me, is like certain people at like after Mass
Oh yeah.
have like come up to us and said, "I just discovered the podcast. I love it. Now I'm listening to like, you know, all the episodes." And anyway, so it's very encouraging to hear, especially, you know, the in-person feedback. I wish I could remember that woman's name, but I don't.
If you're out there and you listen to this episode, let us
Probably,
know.
yeah.
Send it in, frbresnahan@nativityburke.org.
Ooh, you got his email out
You
there.
did,
Wow.
yeah, we can do that, yeah. So send me all of your send me all your fan mail if you need.
That's right.
If you have if you also have fan mail for Mary Castellano, then let me know immediately. No. It's fantastic, because I think what's amazing is hearing the number of like the different people who are connected to some of our ministries will then tune into the podcast about their ministry.
Yeah.
But then they'll discover that there's others, and they reach out and say, "Oh, okay, there's more."
Yeah.
And so it really kind of blossoms. And I think I've said this before, but word of mouth is the number one way to get a hold of us and to find out what we're, you know, to find out what we're up to, and to find out, you know, what else is out there, and to share the message. But I think this example of a fan, like, I know it's not our only listener, but it's funny to think that we have like one person who's really proud of us, Mom and Dad, you know. But I think it's just also a beautiful witness to you, our wonderful listeners, to realize we love you guys. We pray for you daily. We keep you guys close to our hearts, and certainly this is why we do what we do. We want to show, we want to be able to bring you good content, good conversation, and also, just to get a little idea of just, you'll hear Father Bob from the pulpit say how busy and how generous and how much, et cetera, about how active Nativity is. But it's a little helpful to put some of those things into words and be able to meet some of those people who are doing the amazing things in our parish. So we love showcasing that.
He even said, I don't know if he said it, I think he said it on his episode of the podcast or if he told us after the fact or maybe both, but he was saying he's really enjoying listening to the stories of people and getting to know his own flock a little bit better because he doesn't always have time to sit down and really have a deep conversation about like, how's it going? How did this start? Like, just to hear more about like the why people choose to do what they do. And I think a good example of that is like the Walking with Purpose episode.
Oh, huge.
It was really, really, really cool to hear from Jennifer, from Aaron, from Hope, because each of them had different experiences with the women's Bible studies in general, but then how they were each invited to participate in Walking with Purpose, why they continue, and just each of their stories was just really beautiful. Just kind of hearing their different perspectives, and that's something I've really enjoyed.
I just absolutely loved. Now that was season 2, episode 7, so that was like just a couple episodes ago, but it was so powerful because it was so organic.
Yes.
Each of them comes from a different place. Working mothers, stay-at-home mothers, just different kinds of situations. And each one, like a friend invited them, or they were down on something and they saw a bulletin. They saw it in the bulletin and said, well, maybe. Somebody might have thought it was an exercise thing, right? Walking with Purpose. But to be able to put aside whatever their fears were, each of them did their own thing, but it all brought them to the same location. And their lives were changed because of it. I think that's a great example of the grassroots and of how it works.
That's exactly
how it ought to work in a parish.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And exactly what you're saying of people coming from different places, different walks of life, different situations, but meeting together in the church and meeting together in community. And
something resonates, I mean, it's not sort of so stuck on you have to be this kind of a person to come to the group. You have to be, this age range or this, this socioeconomic status.
Exactly.
It's no. We're all in this, and this is helpful for all of us. So come one, come all.
Yeah. I think it even shows in just how different like you and I are. I mean, you have a completely different story than me. You're a priest. I am a layperson.
You're a human.
Come all.
I also am a human.
I like bacon. You like bacon.
You like bacon. We got way more things in common than we have apart. I love that. But one of the best parts about the whole thing is just the way that God uses each of our gifts to make something truly special. I think that's probably a good lesson for how the whole season went, right? It might have felt long, but God was using the time to be able to kind of form us a little bit. God was definitely encouraging you and I and saying, hey, rely on me, not on your own sort of expertise.
Lean not on your own understanding. That's the scripture,
something
right?
like that. Yeah, exactly. But I think also at the same time, it's just kind of saying, hey, look, this season is going to be filled with a lot of variety and a lot of different things. But the one thing they're all going to have in common is they're all focused on me.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I mean, I definitely take that away. If there's kind of any lesson that I've learned or any way I've kind of grown after this, this season is, just really relying on God. It's like, I can have a plan. I think it's good to have a plan. It's good to, especially working in communications, like you have to have a plan. I don't know if I mentioned this in previous episodes, but like, with the nature of my work, I kind of have to be 3 steps ahead.
Sure.
And sometimes that can drive me nuts. And earlier this year, it really drove me nuts. And sometimes the Lord just kind of pulls a plug, whether that could be a technological plug of like, I'm not going to let this work so that you can rest a little bit, relax, lean on me, and trust that it will work out. So
God's going to get his way. Like, that's the thing. God gets his way. Well, okay. So big question. We are we going to do a season 3?
Yes.
We are doing a season 3.
It's amazing, friends. Season 3.
You heard it here first. Season 3 is coming down the pipeline. What do you think we might have in store for them in season 3?
We have in store some other big names from Nativity. So we have some other kind of staples or ministries that have become staples of the parish that I'm really excited to get on the podcast, because I've worked with certain individuals in other ways, and so I'm really excited to get them on and to kind of dive deeper into their stories. Why do they do what they do? So I'm very excited about that. But then we also have some ministries, that one in particular that is new, quote unquote, but has actually been running, kind of just doing its own thing for a while, but just kind of became a ministry. So a little newer. So we have some, like we were describing last season, some that are well established and some that are newer, but have still made just as much of an impact. And each of those individuals, they have such a strong reason for why they do what they do. And I think that's a huge purpose for this podcast, is I want to hear from them. Why do they do what they do? What drives them? What are their stories? So I'm very excited to have some of those people on. Some
Amen.
people have already said yes. Some people
we're still trying to pursue some of them. But we actually have a few that are on the docket for recording. So we're very excited to see who we have coming. All right. Any shout outs?
Yes, I do. I have, I would like to shout out Father Hayes. So Father Hayes is one of the other parochial vicars here at Nativity. He's been with us for a few years. I think he came like maybe 2019 or something like that. But yeah, I just want to give him a shout out. He's doing a lot of work for this church. He does a lot of work in promoting the Mass. We have a video series on the Mass that's got like 60 some episodes. You can feel free to check it out on YouTube if you're interested in kind of diving deeper into the questions of why do we do certain things at the Mass? What does it actually mean?
And each of the episodes is only a couple minutes, right? It's about 5 to 10 minutes, maybe.
Yeah. I'm pretty
really
strict about that. So.
Yeah, they're really short anecdotes, really short teaching moments about each individual part of Mass to kind of help you get a deeper understanding of the beauty of the sacrifice.
Yeah, it's really helped me in my own faith, even just, standing there recording and then going back and kind of post-production. Like, I've learned a lot. And so if anyone out there is just kind of, if you're struggling going to Mass every Sunday and you're like, I don't understand why I'm here, why do I need this? Definitely check it out. Check it out on our YouTube channel, because maybe that's the thing that you need to kind of just
kickstart your faith and motivate you a little bit.
Yeah, to kind of reignite maybe the fire of faith if you're kind of in a place where you feel like you're just kind of dwindling. I don't know if that's too harsh of a metaphor.
Well, but sometimes it feels like God's a little far away. Sometimes our spiritual life can feel a little dry. Sometimes it doesn't feel like there's a lot in the tank. And so it's helpful to kind of recharge when we kind of like, oh yeah, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like, I need that sometimes, even working at a church every single day. So
you can't give what you don't have.
Yeah.
So, my shout out is Father Daniel, Father Daniel Ache. Father Daniel visited us from Cameroon just this past week, and it's the first time in about 6 years that he'd come to visit us. His country's in the middle of a civil war. He's kind of stuck in the middle of the battle lines. One of his brother priests was kidnapped. I mean, it's a really dire situation. And he came over to the United States for a couple of weeks in order to help raise some funds for missionaries that are out there to kind of help his diocese out. And so he's relying on the generosity of all of us. And it was so interesting because I know that in my mind, if I had to deal with that kind of violence or trauma every day, I'd probably be a little more grizzled. I'd be a little more jaded. I'd be, maybe more of, I always say like more of the Chuck Norris type, right? The strong, stout, can't show any fear kind of a thing. But man, this guy was about as joyful as they come. He's laughing. He's having a good time. Oh, it's so good to see you. And I just think that image of radiating the love and goodness of Jesus Christ and celebrating the joy of faith, overshadowing the fear of war and the fear of difficulties. It was just such a powerful witness for me. It says, man, he's dealing with all of this stuff, and I'm worried if my, latte is wrong at Starbucks. So,
oh my gosh.
So it helps me put things into perspective, not so that I feel bad, like, oh, because he goes through hardships, I should endure mine, suck it up. But it's like, it's just being able to see it all in perspective and being able to say, all right, clearly putting myself instead of God at the center of my life in those moments of selfishness. And it's just a great reminder to us to keep our eyes fixed and focused on God.
Amen. So. Yeah, it's beautiful. Wow. This is great.
It was a good episode. All right.
I think so.
Friends, you know how to get a hold of us. We would always appreciate your commentary, your questions, your concerns, and your compliments. We'll take all of it. We are very grateful for you. We are praying for you. Please pray for us. I'm shamelessly stealing that from Father Mike Schmitz. And on behalf of Mary and myself, we wish you and all of your family a great day, and God bless you always. Bye for now.